I've been enjoying a little devotional time that I do every morning, and it's just been enlightening for me and renewing for me, and talking about how God whispers to our hearts. And a lot of times we let other things drown out the voice of God speaking to us. And I realized that I've let a lot of things just kind of cloud out what God's speaking. And I need to get alone and turn off the television set, turn off the radio and the talk shows, and mark out some time where it's just me and God, and spend time alone with Him, and spend time just putting everything down, not thinking about what I've got to do or what's going on, and just sit and listen and see what God puts in my mind, whispers to my heart, and see what God has in store for me. And I hope that you'll do the same thing. Can anybody tell me what the last book of the Old Testament was or is? Malachi. Or if you're Italian, it's Malachi. No, it's Malachi. Malachi is the last book of the Old Testament. If you were Jewish, the last book of the Old Testament was 2 Chronicles. Did you know that? Okay. But for us, the last book of the Old Testament is the book of Malachi. You can turn there and look in the last chapter of the last book of the Old Testament, in the last 2 verses of that book. And I think we can identify what the problem with our world is. In the last 2 verses of the last chapter of the last book of the Old Testament, we can find out what the problem is in the last days of our world today. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. The last verse. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. In our day and time, in our world, we have seen a great increase in the absenteeism of fathers in the family. It began back in the days of the free love movement in the 60s. Sexual relations without any responsibility. There was no father in the home. There was a lot of unwed pregnancy, children being given up for adoption, or at least there was no father there for there to be that disciplining factor in the home, that male leadership role being played, that place of security for the children and for the wife. And so fathers abdicated their responsibility. It's been shown that there's a greater prison rate, or there are more people who are in prison who are fatherless than there are who have fathers. Those young men and women who are in prison were raised in homes where the father was absent. Children who are drug dependent are more likely coming from homes that are broken or who do not have fathers in their homes. I read an article years ago that was published there in Clark County, Alabama. And it said that children are taking their cues from fathers about their church attendance. And it said statistically, there was a study done, statistically, that if children came from homes where the mother and father didn't go to church, that the children were less likely to choose to go to church also. That if the mother chose to go to church, but the father stayed at home, that the children were more likely to stay at home. Though that if the family chose to go to church, the mother was the one who most likely chose which church to go to. Then it said, but if they're in the home, the father chose to go to church and the mother stayed home, the children were more likely to follow the father and choose to go to church. It was like 70%. And if the mother and father both chose to go to church together and carry the children, that there was a 93% probability the children would choose to make that a priority in their lives. Fathers, it's important that you go to church. It's important that you not only go to church, but that you take your children to church. What you put a spiritual priority on, like Sunday school and prayer meeting and things like that, your children will put a priority on. If it's important to you, it's going to be important to them. Because you are, you listening to me? You are the spiritual leader of your household. You are the one who is the high priest of your home. You're the one who is supposed to be leading them to God. You are the one who was created. Adam was created in the image of God. Eve was taken from Adam's rib and recreated in the image of Adam. Man has an important role. This promise was that in the last days there would come one who would turn the hearts of the fathers back to God, so that man would be restored in the image of God and would turn the hearts of the children to their fathers and the fathers' hearts to their children, lest God would send a curse upon the earth. What would that curse look like? I think it would look somewhat like our world looks today. Paul, I think, wrote about it in Timothy, chapter 3. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, that means they're wanting things, materialistic, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, that means they're unable to be controlled, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. Can you deny that that's the way our world looks today? That there's this sense, this feeling this pervasiveness of lawlessness, of ungodliness in our world today? And I think it's because our fathers abdicated their place in the home. And children have disrespected their fathers now. There's no respect of what's holy. There's no difference made between what's holy and what's profane in our world. What's good is called evil, and what's evil is called good. There's such a thing, and if you've been aware of the news at all in the last few weeks, you've heard these words, critical race theory. And it's saying that if you are white, that you are an oppressor. If you are black, you are the oppressed or victimized, and you always will be, and you can't be anything else. It's actually taking a communistic idea that was set forth in Marxism and changing it from one thing and putting it about race. Instead of being about a caste system or the proletariat, it's talking about race. That's the reason there's been such an emphasis about racism over the past 2 years. And the Black Lives Movement. And there are black people who are really standing up against critical race theory because they're locking black children into being the constantly oppressed people, never able to get out from being oppressed. Taking the message that Martin Luther King said, that people will be judged not by their skin color, but by their character, and making it an impossibility. God judges us according not our skin, but our hearts. Every one of us is going to be judged not by our skin color, but by our hearts and by what we've done. God asks us, not just why did we do it, or not just did we do it, but why did we do it? He's going to look on the heart. How's your heart today? And especially dads. Is your heart open to your children? If your children look at your life, do they see Jesus? Do they see what God, who God is? When I see a new dad in the hospital, or I visit in a home and there's a new baby, I almost always sidle up to the dad and I'll say, you know, Dad, you have the greatest responsibility in the world, the biggest job. And they'll look at me kind of strange and I'll say, you're representing God. Because the very first time that baby hears the term God the Father, he's going to think, my daddy. God looks like my daddy. God acts like my daddy. You better be acting like God. That's a big job. Our habits of life, the way we love, the way we act toward our children, needs to be reflecting who God is. So what are some of the characteristics of a godly man? Well, I think the very first thing is that we need to have that agape love. You know, the Bible tells us that God is a God.